What's going on, everybody? We are back again, Matt and Mike from New York Sports Rehab, and we got some positive news finally. We got maybe a much less of a melancholy show today. Finally get to talk about a Jets win. In fact, I think this is the first time in New York Sports Rehab history that we're talking about a Jets win that we were actually excited about. I know last year we covered, I think, 14 of the 16 games or 13 of the 16 games. And by the time the Jets won a couple later in the year, we were more focused on the draft and getting a lower draft pick. So cheerful mood. Absolutely was a good game, a fun game to watch. As Jets fans, it was stressful. Not only did we get 4 quarters of Jets football, but we got 5 pretty much. Obviously it went our way. Goes down to the final kick. But we're going to break it down a little bit more. There were some obvious positives in winning the game, but there are a couple of things that I think we should touch on in terms of, some things that we can continue to grow from. But just kind of getting ready to jump right in it. Jets obviously win 27-24 in overtime, goes down to the last second of overtime, pretty much last 15 seconds, I want to say, with a missed kick from the Tennessee Titans. We saw a lot of things that we haven't seen up to this point. Obviously, we knew the potential of Zach Wilson, but I think this Sunday was the first time that we actually saw the proof in the pudding, the reasoning behind why this guy was picked number 2 overall, why he was raved about ahead of during the pre-draft process and ahead of the NFL draft. And then defensively, there were some positives as well. CJ Mosley looked great. The young cornerback unit continues to hold up and, I wouldn't say overachieve, but definitely performing above what we expected. So let's jump right into it. Dad will obviously got to touch on Zach Wilson and the offense first. Finally, I think they put up 27. They put up 27 after putting up 20 points in the first 3 weeks of the season. So just overall thoughts on not only Wilson, but that Jets offense as a whole in that, second half.
You got to be happy with what you saw from Wilson. First of all, let me apologize in advance for my voice, which I kind of lost on Sunday, screaming and yelling, combined with the fact I already had some allergies. So I'm going to try my best here to get what I have to say out. But again, that's a byproduct of when you don't win many games and then you pull one out like that, you get kind of excited. And I'm still paying the price for it as far as my throat goes. But anyways, yeah, you got to be excited with what you saw, from Wilson. He showed the ability to make plays. He showed the ability to scramble out of the pocket, evade the rush, and still make a very accurate throw. He showed his arm strength. He showed the ability to be gritty, and it's all positives there. Early on, the things that didn't go right for the most part really weren't his fault. You had a drop from Corey Davis, even though that ball was slightly thrown to the side of Davis. He still got his hands on it, and like they say, an NFL receiver gets his hands on a ball, he should make the catch. So it wasn't a picture perfect throw, but one that Davis should have made. Also, the interception, you really can't blame Wilson. In fact, if anything, that was, exactly what you want there. You got to trust your receivers. You have to have a feel for where they're running. He knew exactly where Davis was supposed to be, and Davis just happened to fall down. One of those things that happens. So overall, happy with Davis. But other than that, the offense, the running game is a concern. I believe they had a total of 66 yards rushing, and that's really supposed to be the byproduct of setting things up for Wilson and success. So that's just another notch in Wilson's pocket as far as, how well he's doing, even though the running game wasn't strong, hasn't been strong. I believe the leading rusher was Michael Carter with 38 yards. I think Johnson may have had another 10. That was about it. Tevin Coleman contributed a couple of runs, though. Tevin Coleman's biggest run of the day was very important when he went over the top on that. I believe it was 3rd or 4th down, and 1 to get that first down, because if he goes straight ahead, he doesn't make that. So he went up over the top, and even though he didn't have a lot of yardage, that one particular run that he had was extremely important. Without that, we don't win the game. So kudos to Wilson and his performance. Receiver wise, Davis turned it around. He finally showed us what we were hoping to see and expect. 4 catches, but each one was a huge catch, a big, a deep threat, and kind of gave us an idea of what hopefully we can expect the rest of the way. We heard great things about Keelan Cole, but up until Sunday, really hadn't seen anything there. He made 3 great receptions as well. Again, big ones, I believe at 90-something yards there. Crowder returned, and in case you were sleeping on Crowder this year, he reminded you of just how reliable he really is. 7 receptions, led the team in receptions, a couple of big ones as well. So they got a nice trio there of receivers. Mims was activated, wasn't targeted. I think he was only on the field for 11 plays, so he wasn't a factor. So the questions still, go on as far as what they're going to do with him. But you like that trio of Cole and Davis and I'm forgetting the other guy now again, Crowder.
Yeah.
And you like the trio of the 3 of them going forward. Even Barrios contributed. He had a nice reverse on a run there. And I like Barrios being my 4th or 5th receiver. He's settled in there. If he's your 4th or 5th guy, that's a nice compliment. But when he's leading your team with receptions, then there's a problem. So I like exactly where he was. So good job by those receivers as well. And going to the defensive side of the ball, they continue to, more or less surprise me, because I really look at the personnel, and they continue, though, each week to, perform, especially the secondary.
You need some of that. You need some of that game day chili, I think.
Yeah. I'll let you take it for a little bit, and then I'll come back in.
I got you. Just kind of quickly to touch on you covered a good bit of the offensive side of the ball, and we're sharing a brain for the most part. Most specifically, I did want to touch on the addition of Jamison Crowder. If you thought that he wasn't a value or didn't have any value on this team, this young Jets that leads the league and, snaps played by a rookie, then you're absolutely wrong. You see that the difference between the first 3 weeks and this week 4 matchup against the Tennessee Titans. I know half the Jets fan base and the media was ready to trade Crowder before the year because of Elijah Moore. Well, we're 4 weeks in. Elijah Moore is already dealing with an injury. Haven't seen much of him when he's actually been on the field and stayed healthy. So with that being said, Jamison Crowder, I think the value that he brings to the table is almost one of, obviously he's not the wide receiver 1, but he's the definition of a security blanket. And out of that slot position in this offense, I don't think you can ask for a better fit. You mentioned Barrios. Barrios as your number 1, number 2 guy, you're in a tough spot. Barrios as your number 4, number 5 guy, that's a luxury. That's the type of luxury that good teams have. I think Braxton Barrios is a solid guy, solid threat at, those end arounds, backup slot. You put him in, plug him in plays, these gadget plays. I think that he's a great fit there. But to see Keelan Cole, Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder as a trio pretty much produced to I wouldn't even say what we expected. I think it was more production than I would have expected going into this week. Obviously, the offense have struggled, 6 points against New England, shutout against the Denver Broncos, and then you get a little bit weaker defense in the Tennessee Titans, obviously coached by Vrabel, so you couldn't count them out for anything. But the Jets competed, they fought, and highlighting Wilson, the plays that he made when it was broken plays, whether it was the 3rd down where he, dropped the ball, hit Crowder across the middle, whether it was the deep shot to Keelan Cole, the deep touchdown to Corey Davis, the one thing that stuck out is not only was he making these plays, he looked confident in his decision-making. He looked confident making these plays out of the pocket. It helps when you're only hit. He only faced 1 hurry the whole game. And then kind of on the opposite side of things, you talk about the Jets defense, had 14 quarterback hurries, including 7 sacks. I don't think we've seen a performance like that from the Jets defense since probably the Rex Ryan days. And it was refreshing to see talk about guys, Bryce Huff, John Franklin Myers, Quinnen Williams, a guy that I really want to kind of shine some light on. Obviously, C.J. Mosley playing at an all-pro level, but how about Quincy Williams? 13 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, big play after big play. I've never seen anyone. Obviously, I don't watch the Titans every week, week in, week out, but I follow them enough to where I know how dominant Derrick Henry is. Never, ever seen anyone take Henry down with that type of force that Quincy Williams did. I want to say it was on the 3rd and 2, and it forced the Titans to get off the field there. So he played out of his mind. He's been playing out of his mind since he became a member of the New York Jets. And then talking about those young corners, obviously saw Eccles go down with an injury. I believe it was concussion related. Hope to see him back because he's been, 5th round pick. He's been a guy that, has produced and has, the less you hear these guys' names, the less you hear their number called out, the better that they're doing at these outside corner positions. Bryce Hall looks like, I'm not going to say he cemented himself as a top 10 corner or an absolute, cornerback one for the rest of his career, but he solidified himself as an NFL corner. I think he's proved that, whether it's tackling, reminds me a bit of Revis, not exactly in the passing game, but the way he's able to also help out in the run game, his tackling, he's a sure tackler on that outside end. And I believe he also had half a sack against the Titans this weekend as well. Saw Ashton Davis a little bit, not enough to really, judge him that well. First game coming off an injury. You had the other safeties, Wilson and Niesman, struggled a little bit on those, running back screens. It seemed like all the Titans could do all day was run the ball with Henry or these little dink and duck screens, and the Jets were not only able to shed the blocking, but when they were able to get a hand on a guy, it wasn't often that they could make that first or second tackle. I know early on the game we saw 3rd and 21, and they got got the first down off of that, and we saw that a couple other times in the game where the Jets had for 2 plays, 3 plays had dominated that Titans offensive line, had dominated the Titans receivers on the outside, and then they give up a long gain due to a screen pass. So another shout out to the kicker, Madden Amendola. Game-winning kick, obviously, eventually would be the game-winning kick. It looked a little shaky, but, got to give him credit there. Big moment for him. First big moment that he's faced. This guy last year was sitting on his couch watching NFL games. So big shout out to him. And then kind of going into the coaching, Robert Saleh, we'll get into this a little bit more later, but Saleh, the intensity, what he's been able to do with this young defensive unit and this young core, I can't really put into words how valuable it has been to this team. Like I mentioned earlier, the Jets lead the league in snaps played by rookie, I think by 150, 200 snaps at this point. So kudos to him. Before we get more into, Saleh and into the coaching scheme and the staff. And, I think LaFleur didn't call a perfect game. I wouldn't even say he called a great game, but I think he did call a good enough game to obviously get the Jets the win. So going back kind of to the defensive side of the ball, Dad, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, you gotta like what you see. A lot of pressure. I thought the first couple of weeks the Jets were playing too vanilla on defense, and we're just sitting back in that soft type of prevent. And you could see this week the strategy was totally different. A lot of times it wasn't so much what they did, but the fact that they were giving you at least that illusion, or that they were showing blitz, they were showing all out blitz. One down, you'd see Mosley lining up over the center, looking like he may blitz. The next down, he might be on the outside. And, sometimes they brought pressure. Sometimes they dropped back. Sometimes they brought a couple. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the old Rex Ryan defenses. And it just was a lot more aggressive. Even pre-snap was but much more aggressive, and it kept, Tannehill on his toes, as opposed to just rushing 4 and everybody just sitting back in coverage, which is what we saw the first couple of weeks. So I liked the aggressiveness. I liked the blitzing. I liked the pre-snap, formations that they were utilizing as well. And hopefully that'll continue, because especially going up next week, and we'll get more into it later with Matt Ryan, you just can't rush 4 and let him sit back there and give him cushion, because he'll take it and he'll pick you apart. So I hope they continue to apply that pressure. The pattern seems to be right now that Saleh likes to rush 4 on first and second down, and on third down blitz. And I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
just as long as you're not too predictable and you're showing different type of things pre-snap. But to me, it looked like I was looking at a totally different defense from the standpoint of just what they were showing before the ball was actually snapped. You got to like what you're getting from Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Myers, right across the defensive line. Nathan Shepard, I think, had a few penalties on him, but still doing strong on the run as well. Foley Fadakowski has done a solid job. Always rates out very high. Williams and Mosley. When was the last time we saw two linebackers combined for, I think it was 25 tackles?
Yes, 26.
26. You expect it maybe from Mosley, but not from the older brother of Quinnen Williams, who I didn't know could play like this. But 26 combined tackles between the two. I guess Mosley's answered the question, yeah, he can still play. It looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Right now he stays healthy and doesn't wear down as the season goes on because he didn't play the last 2 years. Excellent shot of making the Pro Bowl this year. But it's been a long time since we've seen two Jet linebackers combined for 26 tackles. I think they each had a sack. So you got to love the way they played. For the most part, it looks like the Jets are just playing two linebackers, even though they advertise as 4-3. What they're doing is they're taking the third linebacker out and either going with an extra corner or an extra safety. And since it's a passing league, why not? So I think they've done a really good job, excuse me, of more or less offsetting the loss of the linebackers that they have. And you gotta really compliment the cornerbacks and safeties for that, because not only is the line putting pressure on them, but you have to have coverage long enough to prevent the quarterback from releasing the ball, which allows the lineman to look that much better under pressure. And that's probably the biggest surprise of the entire defense is the secondary. Brandon Eccles doing a great job. He gets hurt. They bring in Javelin Guidry. He had a game-saving tackle on Derrick Henry late in the game. Didn't miss a beat with him. You talked about Hall already, Bryce Hall. I believe he's given up 7 receptions this year. Only cornerback in the NFL to give up less than 10. So, I mean, he's been playing lights out. And it seems like, and of course, Michael Carter II has had a great rookie season so far, and they've given you much more than you could have ever expected there. So really, you just hope that they can continue to play this way. You hope that Mosley can hold up and not let the fact that he missed 2 years affect his play later on. But, the defense has just been lights out, and they're going to have to be lights out next week as well, even though the Falcons aren't a very good team. Matt Ryan is one of the best in the game. Probably a borderline Hall of Famer, if not a Hall of Famer, and they're going to need to bring their A game for that. So great job with the defense. Overall, great job for the offense. I think the running game, especially up the middle, is really the fault of the interior line. There just seems to be nothing there, no holes there, no separation for our running backs to get going. I blame that. I hate to say it. I'm going to blame it in particular on the center, Connor McGovern. We as Jet fans, one thing we've had for years are great centers, going back to my old days of John Schmidt and Joe Fields and Kevin Mawai and most recently Mangold. And believe me, McGovern, after now in his second year, is not in that category. And the center, it all starts with the center. And I attribute a lot of the fact that we haven't run the ball well to the fact that our center has done a terrible job. Not the only one in there. We miss Becton, definitely on the run. So I think that not having that quality center that we've had in the past makes a big difference. I will give them some kudos, though. Pass protection was excellent. They gave Wilson much more time to throw. He got rid of the ball quicker. And so, you got to give them their credit there. Now they got to work on the run blocking, but they got the passing down. Last thing I'm going to say is, just give me 1 second. Talking about, I wanted to bring up one play in particular that really could have cost us the game, and that was that bogus pass interference call on 4th down late in the game. That was 50-50. From what I saw, 2 guys, bodies colliding, going for the ball. hadn't been called all game. And when the game was on the line in the fourth quarter or overtime, whatever the case may be, you got to let the players play and only call the obvious. And that was not obvious. You could look at that play and you could look at it from both sides. And to keep the game going because of incidental contact that could have gone either way was a really bogus and bad call. Thankfully, the Jets won, because if they didn't, that would be a big story today.
Yeah.
But the refs let the players play the game. You're not supposed to be the focal point of it. Keeping the game going just for the sake of keeping the game going is not fair for the team that rightfully should win the game. If you're calling it all game, at least we know what's coming. But you didn't, and you shouldn't there. And for some reason, you decided on fourth down to call incidental contact with two receivers just kind of their bodies hitting each other. No pulling of the arm, no dragging anybody down, no pushing. It was just incidental contact. And if it wasn't for that missed field goal by Bullock, it would have cost us a victory. And the very best we would have had was a tie. So terrible call there, and I wanted that to bring that attention to refs. Let the players play the game, especially late in the game and overtime.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And in more ways than one, not even with the Jets, not even with this particular game, watching that Sunday night football game against the Buccaneers and Patriots, there were a number of calls within a 15-minute span that were absolutely ridiculous. There was a pass interference call on the last drive of the game when New England was driving down to attempt that game-winning field goal. That was absolutely ridiculous. If you follow me on Twitter, I've voiced my opinion a couple times already this season. The refs have way too much impact on these games. This is professional football. I understand rec league. I understand middle school ball, high school ball. The refs are implementing these rules, and you know, you have to know the rules and you have to get better to play a cleaner game. This is professional football. These guys do this for a living. There's millions of dollars on the line, player by player, and we're seeing games dictated. We're seeing the final score of games, the outcome of games dictated on these referees making these calls. And the thing that makes me so upset about this type of refereeing we're seeing in this modern day NFL is there's no repercussions. There's no one holding these referees accountable that I know of. I don't think that there's a, referee anonymous that's, holding these guys accountable. Are they being fined for these missed calls? Even last night in the Chargers and Raiders game, there was a number of missed calls, or no, I shouldn't say missed calls, number of calls that really had no business being called. There was a taunting on Darren Waller. There was a roughing the passer on Joey Bosa that was very questionable. But kind of getting back to the Jets, you're absolutely right. If the Jets would have lost that game, even if they would have tied that game, it would have been a bummer. I saw a tweet on Sunday night, and I don't know if I absolutely agree with it, but a fan pretty much said I would have taken a tough loss rather than a measly tie. And obviously, a tie would have gone, looked better on our record, and, could be the difference between a tiebreaker or not if we get to that point where we're, looking at the playoffs. I wouldn't get, that far ahead of ourselves yet. But, a tie would have been really kind of tough to accept after seeing Wilson and the offense perform so well in the second half. And before we get into kind of, looking ahead towards next week, one thing I want to talk on real quick is that third and goal from the one. Mike LaFleur, really questionable play call. You run the ball up the middle there, and you probably go for it on fourth down. That's 4 down territory. The only reason they decided to kick the field goal there is because Zach Wilson lost 5 or 6 yards on a rush. Run the ball, LaFleur. I understand that the offensive line and the interior linemen aren't exactly up to par, aren't exactly clicking on all cylinders. You even mentioned it. You've been saying the whole game while we're watching it, let's get Zach Wilson out on a run. Let's get him out of the pocket. Let's get him on a fake or a naked bootleg. And they waited until probably the biggest call of the game. Obviously, hindsight being 2020, they win the game. It wasn't that detrimental, but I think if the Jets would have gone on to lose that game, or if they would have gone on to miss that kick, which looked wobbly and shaky at the time, that would have been definitely highlighted more by not only us, but the media and some more of the fans on Twitter. So going back to what you said earlier, you said, you got Matt Ryan. We're at 9:30 in London. Looks like we're going to be eating some good luck chili pretty early on Sunday. But I think will be the Falcons aren't a good football team. I think they'll finish with a top 5 pick. I think they'll eventually probably move on from Matt Ryan this offseason. If not, move on from him. I think that they'll get somewhat of a predecessor or start beginning that process. But we're definitely going to see these linebackers and these cornerbacks and these safeties tested more next week than we have all this season. You think about it, we face Sam Darnold. We faced Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater, and Mac Jones, and now we face Ryan Tannehill. Haven't faced I hate to say it, Tannehill is not great. You take away A.J. Brown, you take away Julio Jones, and you stick him with just Henry, who didn't seem like he had that big of a game, but obviously finished with just short of 160 rushing yards. You take away those weapons, and he's no more than a mediocre guy. So we're definitely going to see Matt Ryan attempt to push the ball down the field. One thing about this Falcons team is they're not that great of a team, largely in part due to their defense, but they're going to put up points, so they're going to take shots downfield. They're going to try to stretch that Jets young defense out. And it's definitely going to be, I think it's going to be a competitive game. I wouldn't say the Jets or the Falcons either way are going to run away with it at any point. I think it'll be close considering neutral site, going to be in London early in the morning. I think really it's going to come down to what team plans and prepares and kind of rolls with the flow of not only the travel but the time change, and just kind of, you can't get lost in the noise. You can't get lost in, we're in London, and then get out there and get punched in the mouth. It's got to be a business approach, and that's I'm actually fairly confident in the Jets heading into this type of situation because you got Robert Saleh. He seems like a guy strictly business. When the Jets are succeeding, when they're doing well after they won the game, obviously he seemed very happy, seemed excited. Seemed a bit, personable, but I really think that between him and Douglas and the rest of the coaching staff, between Ulbrich and LaFleur, that, they're going to have this team ready to go come 9:30 this Sunday. From the offensive side of the standpoint, the interior offensive line we touched on a little bit. Elijah Vera-Tucker finally looking like he's getting some ground under him, some feet under him. Obviously missed all of preseason, so now he's got 4 games under his belt. Looks like he's going to be the real deal at that left guard position. And obviously, as soon as we can get Becton back on that left side, there should be some holes. I absolutely agree with you in terms of Connor McGovern. And then you talk about Van Roten or Van Rotten, whichever version of them you want to talk about on the right side. So definitely some things that could be fixed up. But I'm a bit worried between that interior, McGovern, Van Roten, Elijah Vera-Tucker, still a young guy, and you got Grady Jarrett, one of the probably top 5 interior defensive linemen. He could cause havoc all, morning Sunday if the Jets don't have a plan or aren't ready to kind of deal with those stunts and deal with what he brings to the table. So back to you, just kind of your thoughts coming up this week, Falcons at 9:30 across the pond.
Well, first of all, going back to what you talked about as far as a tie goes, a tie looks a lot better when you're 3-0 than when you're 0-3.
Mm-hmm.
An 0-3 tie means you're still looking for your first win of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and they still call you the winless Jets.
Yep.
So given the situation the Jets were in, that's the win was much more important than a tie, just based on their record and getting that first victory. As far as that play call on Zach Wilson, I don't know if he audibled into that or it was called that way. It looked like it was a rollout, possible pass, and he couldn't find anybody open and ran it and lost yardage. The big mistake there on his part was he needed to throw it away. But once you run a play like that, you risk losing that extra down. I would have rather taken my chances with 2 runs straight up the middle, and it was less than a yard. And to me, if you want to use analytics, the chances of scoring are much higher that way.
Yeah.
Now, getting into the Falcons game itself, why not? Why can't we win this game? It's a winnable game. The Falcons rank 30th in the league. I'll say that again, 30th. Dead last in points allowed. 128 points given up. That's 32 points a game. That's bad. They're at the bottom in run defense. They're in the bottom of pass defense. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to repeat what we did last week, this week against the worst defense in the NFL. Offensively, they got a couple of weapons, but Calvin Ridley is basically it as far as a receiver. If you can shut him down, double team him or whatever, and force Matt Ryan to use his secondary guys, that limits to what they can do. Running attack, they got Mike Davis. I think he's got 150 yards rushing in 4 games.
Yeah, he's
nothing special.
Yeah.
That's only about 40 yards a game or so. And that's really it as far as weapons. Where I'm worried is just the quarterback himself, because a good quarterback could make other players around him, average players, look good. So they need to put the pressure on Matt Ryan. They need to do everything they can to take away his game, to fluster him, whatever the case may be. If they can do that, I think the Jets can win this game handily. But, you got to give some credit to the quarterback and his abilities. So even though the Falcons are 3.5-point favorites, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm confident. I think the Jets can win this game. Less than a touchdown, but I think they can win this game. And, the fact that they're playing in London and it's a home game for Atlanta, make no mistake about it, that crowd in Atlanta gets loud in that Dome Stadium, and they make a difference, and you're taking that away. And you mostly have a neutral crowd there. There may be more Falcon fans there because they have a larger history, and Matt Ryan is more universally well-known than anybody in the Jets, but you can compare the atmosphere you're going to be going into in London versus being on the visiting team, the visiting side in Atlanta. So why not? I think this is a winnable game. I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to win this game. It's going to be close, but why not us? Why can't we take it 2 in a row? The Falcons aren't that good. Let's just go ahead and get it done.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, they're 3.5-point favorites, in fact, the Falcons. So you take them out of Atlanta. They've been struggling on both sides of the ball. Jets seem like they're finally getting some ground under them, some feet going. Give me Jets plus 3.5, and give me Jets straight up. Obviously, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Could be coming back to this time next Tuesday saying we reverted back to the 6 points over 2 weeks, Jets. But I really do think that not only how the team played, but how the game was decided, how the game was won, is really going to give this team a boost, not only going into this weekend, but going into the bye week. Then you've got New England, and then, October 31st, we're going to be there up in New York against the Bengals. So things are starting to get pretty interesting. Obviously, don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. You mentioned it when we're watching the game. Sometimes as Jets fans, we just want the crumb. We just want a little piece of the cake. We don't need the whole thing. But the more this team starts putting on tape and the more we start seeing the direction, because I think that was the number one thing offensively we were concerned about, is not only there was no production, but there was no direction. And I think we're finally starting to see, Wilson on the little short stuff, he can make things happen. But when it comes to pushing the ball downfield, I'm much more confident. You made a couple good points while we were watching the game. 3rd and long, 3rd down, Wilson's taking these deep shots. You said it best. Say they pick it off, it's the same thing as a good punt. So it's a lot less stressful than, these throws across the middle that we've seen Wilson struggle with a little bit. I hope next week that they continue to let him do his thing. We saw the swagger. We saw the confidence in Wilson, and I think that'll continue to grow. So we're sharing a brain. Give me the Jets coming up on Sunday. Cross the pond. We're going to be eating breakfast chili. You already know. 1-0 with the chili. Looking to make that 2-0. If you don't know that reference, go check out my dad's Facebook and go see what this good luck chili is all about. So with that being said, guys, we're about to get out of here. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Check us out. YouTube link should be shared after the live stream on the social media apps. You guys can go check us out there. Go subscribe. Go give us a like. Continue to support us as we build that page step by step. So, guys, once again, appreciate the support. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday, hopefully, with another positive, mood, and another maybe. My dad actually will have to take the show off because his throat will be that much more worse if we're able to compete at that type of level. Yeah. So once again. Yeah. Once again, guys, appreciate it. Stay tuned. We'll be having more content come out within the next week. Luis Rojas not coming back to the Mets. Preseason basketball starting tonight. Knicks Pacers. So a lot of stuff rolling the ball, getting into this fall, my favorite time of the year in terms of the sports season. So MLB playoffs as well. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be back soon with some more content. Everybody take it easy.